Welcome to the November 2020 General Meeting of the Dayton Microcomputer Association. My name is Peter Hess. I'm the DMA's current Vice President and Programs Chair. It has been my pleasure for more than 2 years to open our monthly general meetings for the entertainment, enjoyment, and enlightenment of our members and guests. For some time, we have had people suggest that we begin our general monthly meetings with our presentation instead of our organization's announcements. So today, for many reasons, we are going to have our guest presentation again at the beginning of our meeting. After this brief introduction, please let us know how you feel about this change through our Contact Us form on the website, on our website's page, www.dma1.org/contact us. If you're not yet a member, to begin your annual membership, please print a membership application form from our website and mail it to us along with a check for only $25. By supporting the DMA, we can continue to do what we do, and trust me, that is much more than what is obvious. Two people will be talking with us during today's presentation. Rich Gilman, the president and co-founder of Terrace Metrics, Inc., and also Logan Sotelo, the architect of the Terrace Metrics software, which we will be talking about and viewing some of tonight. Mr. Sotelo will talk more about his experience later. Now, Dr. Gilman is a fellow of the American Psychological Association and the International Society of Quality of Life Studies. A licensed psychologist, Dr. Gilman's research has been formally recognized as exemplary in terms of understanding indicators that best predict optimal human functioning. Dr. Gilman received his PhD from the University of South Carolina and his MBA from Oxford University. This presentation will provide an overview of an innovative software program that assesses behavior health among students and adults from ages 8 and older. The program has been used in several sectors, including education, first responders, healthcare settings, and the general workplace. Participants will see how the software is linked to a variety of resources that can be used to improve self-identified areas of need. Participants will better understand the power of data using cloud-based platforms to inform individuals and workplaces of the importance of behavioral health on a number of health, social, educational, and occupational outcomes. Now, some general information about Terrace Metrics, some background information. Terrace Metrics contracts with organizations to administer a comprehensive behavioral health, that is risk resiliency tool, that assesses the most robust predictors of interpersonal and intrapersonal functioning. Terrace Metrics proprietary software immediately provides the results for each student to schools and parents. Now, if they're minors, it goes to the schools and the parents first, not the minors, or directly to the user if the user is an adult. These results are accompanied by straightforward and practical suggestions for improvement or intervention where necessary. The cloud-based platform and the information provided is both easy to access and understand and has been highly utilized by schools, first responders, healthcare settings, and general workplaces. Its school version is on the Ohio Quality and Effective Practice Registry at the highest level. And Dr. Gilman, you're on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here along with Logan, who will discuss how the software came to being. I will also say that the software is just a part of a larger process that has been in, we continue, it's an iterative process. And what we do is we take feedback not only from workplaces, but from schools. We incorporate that into this additional phases with the software. So it's a living, breathing thing. It's not a static thing by any means. Also, our algorithms, which are quite predictive, they are updated on a regular basis. So we use AI techniques in order to do this. We've been in place since 2018 as a formal company, but this is the seeds of what we've been doing have been around for decades. And my research at the University of South Carolina, I know I look like I'm 16 years old, but I've been around for a bit. And so over 30 years of research looking at what are these predictors we need to think when we want to predict optimal functioning, full stop. And so this is just an extension of what I've been doing for my career. Previous to this, I was an academic at Georgia State and University of Kentucky. I ran our PTSD center at the University of Cincinnati Medical School and all of our school-based mental health programs at Cincinnati Children, and I gave it up. I completely gave up my career to do this because nobody else it's been a black hole when we're thinking about how do we want to measure, monitor, and manage behavioral health over time. We first started in schools, that was our bailiwick. However, there's been such a need in workplaces and specific workplaces, and of course, we don't need to go far in our media to see how some of us struggle. And the two biggest groups that we are really focusing on now are first responders, whether that's police officers or emergency room, that's one, but our educators. And that's what was brought to our attention. I think that's how you were brought to our attention, was that several of the districts around Dayton are using this, not only for the students, but there's the workplace version. And that's what I'm going to show with you tonight. And the reason why is that, as I've said, there's a tremendous black hole around this idea of what is behavioral health and why is this so important for us. We tend to focus on our physical health, and that's very important too. But 50% of the variance associated with physical health is up here. It's how we see ourselves, it's how we see our world, it's how we see our future. That's very important because it informs our physical health and vice versa. So that's number one. Number two is most of us are fine. We're all doing fine. But we operate under this thing called a bias of normalcy. Now that's old Doc Gilman's word. You can use it if you want. Bias of normalcy simply means this: I'm fine. Even when I know I'm not, I'm fine. That's fine. So the problem with the dangers of that bias of normalcy is that we convince ourselves, regardless of how we might be feeling, regardless of the adverse experiences we might be in, we're still going to believe in that. And there's nothing wrong with that until that adversity starts to rear its ugly heads. And maybe we're not. So think about this. And I'm not going to ask you don't have to volunteer this information by any means. But sitting where you are right now, do you know what your blood pressure is? Now, most of us are going to take a guess, and most of us are going to be correct. But most of us are going to believe it's around 120/80. Now, whether that's going to be because of medical interventions or pharmaceutical interventions or just how we are, we're going to assume that. I'm going to assume that. Now, let's say, for instance, I go to my physician later on and I find out that my blood pressure is not 120/80, it's 190/170. Completely different than what I expected. Now, at that point, what we know about behavioral science is simply this. At that point, that's when we are most likely to do something with that information. We are going to act on it. There's very few of us who are going to ignore something like that. Now that's our blood pressure. That's our physical health. We have 6 waves from Sunday to measure physical health, usually to compare it against a metric to determine whether we are fine or whether we're not. Think about behavioral health though. We don't have anything like that we are able to ourselves measure, monitor, manage over time. The impetus of what we are doing is allowing individuals to do this themselves. It's not so much reducing the stigma around mental health or anything like this. I come from a different perspective. Now I'm going to be a little bit heretical because I represent, the helping profession. And we often think that the helping profession, most things can be a diagnosable form. I'm a little bit different. I don't think that most of us, what we're experiencing requires clinical intervention. Now, some of us will, of course, but most of us, we're dealing with more existential things that we ourselves can work on as long as we know it. So we operate under this principle at Terrace Metrics: that which gets measured gets done. And so we're bringing attention to the individual and allowing them to determine what they want to do with that information. Why is that so important? So here's my favorite part of this presentation, because I'm going to take your attention off from looking at me, and we'll start looking at PowerPoints, and then in about 5 minutes, I'll walk you through the system. So why is this so important for us, especially in the workplace intervention? Here's the problem. Between 30 to 62%, this is just national averages, of employees are currently experiencing what we call behavioral health concerns. Now, behavioral health, by definition, is not just looking at risk. It's also looking at our personal strengths. It's those personal strengths that we want to make sure that are intact. And I'll walk you through what those personal strengths are in just a second. If those strengths are there, and if they are at the highest level, whatever we're facing in terms of adversity, we're able to overcome or work through it. Adversity is our middle name as human beings. We can't get rid of adversity. We can work through it though. And those personal strengths allow us to do that. If they start to diminish, if they start to erode, if they're no longer there, that's when we see the effects of adversity rearing its ugly head. And as I've mentioned, most of us don't know when we start to slip on those personal strengths. So up to half or even more of employees are currently experiencing behavioral health conditions. And it's pretty consistent even with this pandemic. There are some recent studies out there that suggest that the distress around the pandemic, from the social isolation among others, has actually increased this. The key is 70% suffer in silence. Now, real quickly, as a therapist, when I was working, let's use individuals with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a very common thing with first responders among others, and we would always get them better. And they would, at the end, they would always say, man, I wish I could tell my friend this. Now, I often thought about that. Why doesn't your friend come? And we could say, well, the reason is they don't want to come to a brick and mortar. But again, I operate from this assumption, I don't think they know. So we want to bring attention to them. Now, the interpersonal impact of, if we allow it to happen, behavioral health issues not only affect the individual, but they certainly affect their loved ones and their home relationships. It certainly leads to a number of negative outcomes, such as career burnout, certainly physical health. The idea of presenteeism is very strong. Most of the issues that an individual faces are going to preclude them from really functioning in the workplace. So they may be clocking in, but they're not necessarily giving it their all because they're dealing with a lot of issues. And so we want to make sure that we give something to the employers. Now, the cost of doing nothing, and that is why we created this, is to really offset these healthcare expenditures in the workplace, which are 50% greater for workers who report higher levels of stress. The issue is that stress, poor behavioral health, is the major reason why a person quits. It's not like they can't handle the position. It's that they quit because of the stress associated either with that or what they're bringing to the table. Problem with employers, of course, is by replacing that individual, you're now talking 120 to 200% of the salary to get them up to speed. And of course, those with poor behavioral health reporting more sick days, lost productivity. Here's the key that we often forget. For every $1 is spent on resources to promote behavioral health, there's actually a huge return on investment according to these outcomes. So resiliency is the key. If we first identify when we are slipping under behavioral health strengths, then we can find a way to promote it. And if we can promote it, now we are in a position to work through or overcome adversity. So resiliency, those personal strengths, that explains up to 50% when we're thinking about workplace outcomes. If we can collectively promote workplace strengths, we actually see a reduction in costs, healthcare costs, among other things. The reason we created this one is there is no comprehensive system right now in the workplace. There's a couple of surveys that could be given, but there's no way to really ensure confidentiality. There's no systematic way for employers to monitor collective behavioral health over time. And oftentimes, if an individual is participating in something, they have to wait for these responses or results to come through. So there's no immediacy. So it's why we created this, Terrace Metrics. It's an online tool. There's no pencil and paper. You don't have to go to anything. You can take this anywhere you want. You can do it at any time you want and how many times you want. Everything that we do is clinically evidenced, and we've got data to support this. That's why we're in several state registers for what we do. The results are immediate. As soon as the individual takes it, which is only about 10 minutes, they're going to get those responses via an online report right away. And everything that they're going to do is, how would I say, is interactive, meaning that they can themselves access resources to help them out. It can be done in anything. Be done in work, laptops, desktops, iPads, phones. It can be done in any operating language with the exception of Microsoft. What is it? Microsoft. I'm going to get that one. It'll come to me. Not that language. Data security issues. That's the reason. What will come to the individual is they get their own results right away. What the employer gets is they are going to get a de-identified workplace report and allows them to understand the collective behavioral health, either overall or within specific departments. And it helps them understand what kind of resources should we be leveraging to help that particular group or the entire group so that we can promote those strengths that seem to be lacking collectively among our groups. And that leads to better health outcomes and also cost savings to the employer. So I know I've been talking about these indicators. What are these indicators what are these indicators? Now, these indicators are specifically chosen for two reasons. One is they're very good indicators themselves. Number two, they're the most robust indicators of workplace health beyond the productivity figures. It is 50% of the variance associated with workplace productivity is associated with these indicators right here. And we divide them into two. That's behavioral health. We got resiliency, personal strengths. We have risk. That is what people bring to the table. Resiliency indicators, first one is global satisfaction. It's a very simple concept. Just think about your life right now. Take a step back in your life right now. Think about it. How are you doing? Now, that simple question I just asked, believe it or not, is a very complex thought because you got to think about all the domains that are important in your life. You got to weight them accordingly, and you got to come up with that summative score, whatever it is. But that score is the biggest predictor of mental health. Global satisfaction is also one of the biggest predictors of workplace productivity. Hope. Hope is simply this. I've got a goal. It doesn't matter what the goal is, but I got a block to that goal. High hope adults, they can come up with multiple strategies to work around that blockage to get to that goal. If one strategy doesn't work, they're going to find another strategy. They're going to do that until they get the goal. That's hope. Low hope individuals, they have one strategy. And if that thing doesn't work, they typically give up. And so that is why in clinics, for example, we see a huge predictor between low hope and whatever the distress they're facing. So hope itself is one of the biggest predictors of distress. And then standards is, do I have my standards set high enough in order to meet the standards that are thrust upon me by my workplace, by my family, by my friends, what have you. Leadership qualities is another one. And research shows you don't have to be formal leaders, but if you've got specific leadership qualities, you're flourishing, you're doing better, not only in work, but in life. And then positive workplace experiences. So that's the resiliency side. Now the risk side makes sense. These are the things that are precluding an individual from truly functioning. Things like anxiety and depression. Self-criticism is another one. Those who tend to beat themselves up have a hard time accepting mistakes. They have a hard time seeing themselves as, taking these mistakes and learning from them. We call them perfectionists. And then the other one is social rejection. Ostracism is the biggest predictor of mental distress. Those who are either ostracizing themselves from others or being ostracized report higher levels of depression and other negative outcomes. And then we have supplemental indicators: drug, alcohol, trauma, domestic abuse, or domestic violence. That is victims of that. The key for all of this is that the employer chooses the indicators. So we do not thrust in the indicators on a workplace. The workplace determines what indicators they want to be administered either to a group or the entire workplace. So the choice is entirely up to the employer themselves. The system itself is very simple. Now I'm giving you all of this, and now we're going to go into it in just a second. But the process itself is very simple. No matter where we are at, we're in many states, we're going to find we want to have a designated workplace person. We're going to train them on this. So they're going to be monitoring this in the workplace. They're not going to monitor the system, but they're our designated go-to person. We're also going to identify the workplace or the community resources, either within the workplace, like the EAP, but more importantly, the agencies in the community that should an individual find themselves high in a certain distress variable, they know where to go to. So we're going to make all that before we even do anything. For the employee, it's very simple. They're going to get a link, and it's going to go through their workplace. Now, that's the only time we use their workplace email, is just to send them the link to take the assessment. That's it. After that, we don't use work emails at all. And they simply click on the link and they take it. And it's going to take 10 minutes for them to do this. At the end of 10 minutes, they are automatically going to be seeing their reports and their results. Now, behind the scenes, it doesn't matter whether it's the workplace, whether it's an agency that the workplace wants to monitor, or an EAP, or even us, since we're staffed by licensed mental health professionals, somebody's going to reach out to anyone who's flagged high in depression. And what we're going to do is we're going to reach out through their personal email, because they're going to provide that email when they're taking this. That's how we reach out to them. We're going to reach out to them within 15 minutes of them taking it. And all we're going to do, it's not therapy. We're just going to make sure that they know the resources in their community. If we don't hear back from them in that 15 minutes, we'll wait 24 hours, and then we'll wait 72 hours. And if we don't hear back after 3 times, we'll leave them alone, because we certainly don't want to harass anyone. The employer never knows this. The employer does not know when the employee takes this. The employee never has access to this identified information. This is strictly for the individual themselves. And in fact, we don't even know who's taking it. We don't even see the results. There's a firewall, so we are HIPAA compliant. Now, the individual themselves will have access to resources on their report, or if they want, they can certainly reach out to us and we can help them with those resources. So that is the reason why we're doing this. This is the overview of how it works. It's very simple. It only takes 10 minutes out of an employee's time. The employer is going to get a report that's going to identify everything. But behind all that simple thing, it's took a lot of work to create this software, this computer software that allows this to generate. And Logan, are you on?
Yep, I'm here.
Thank you, Logan. Now, Logan is part of Fusion Alliance. Now, Fusion Alliance is out of Indianapolis. They have multiple offices in Columbus, Indianapolis, and Cincinnati. We were very fortunate to partner with Fusion Alliance 2 years ago to create this system. And I don't want to do a disservice to Fusion. They are fantastic. So Logan, while I get everything ready, would you mind kind of providing an overview of Fusion?
Yeah, I don't mind at all. So I work as my name's Logan Sotelo. You guys obviously, I was introduced a little bit earlier, but just so that everybody knows my name if you came in late or something. I'm an employee at Fusion Alliance. I'm a consultant. So what we do there is we get paired up with projects like Rich's, which I've actually been on this project since the beginning, just kind of working step by step, making every new phase come to fruition. But it's not just me. We actually have a pretty decent sized team. In the beginning, I think there was like close to 10 people working on this project, but we've kind of, since we're kind of more already in production and just kind of providing more support now, or just working on specific features, we've kind of condensed the team a little bit, around 4 or 5 people, just depending on what the work is. But yeah, pretty much every phase we've worked on this project, we push out some either new functionality or new features that provide support for the schools, districts, or workplaces. Even just recently, we've implemented the Clever portion, which schools required Terrace Metrics to actually be paired with this other application so that they could use it through Clever is like their, what would you describe that as, Rich?
It's just an automated uploading of rosters, and it can be used in the workplace too. It's an automated uploading of rosters and very simple to use. And Logan, Fusion has done a lot of work. If you're familiar with Kroger, they do a lot of work with Fortune 500 companies. I can't say enough about our partnership with Fusion. If you ever have any questions or need some services, please look them up. They're great. So with that, Logan, is there anything else I'm missing?
Nope. I think we are good to move on to the next portion.
Well, the great portion about this is the system itself. Now, if you could stop it now, because we are in proprietary areas here.
Sure. You can call me Peter, by the way.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Great. So this is being used now not only regionally with many of our first responders in our schools, but it's also being used statewide in many states. One state in particular is Ohio, where we're at. All of our highway patrol officers are taking it. All of our public safety officers are taking it. Again, it's all confidential. So I wanted to call your attention to something that is brand new. It's quite innovative. It's being embraced by a number of workplaces, not only in our first responders, but especially our schools and healthcare settings. And I'm free to answer any questions that you have about the system or about the idea behind it.
Rich, that was terrific. You know, one quick question before I forget what it is. You had said that you could have somebody read or have the assessment read to somebody so they could give an answer. Is it through a screen reader program, or is that like a proctor?
It's our own. It's not a visual. It's our own electronic version. Yeah.
Okay, so it's your own personal screen reader.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. And one thing I wanted to also say is we had to stop the recording because there was proprietary information that we didn't want to run any risk of somebody stealing the information, the valuable information that the Rich has with this product. I'm quite impressed. If you have any questions about this and you need to ask further questions about this particular product, terracemetrics.org is their address. There's a contact form on terracemetrics.org, and Rich is real good at responding quickly. So go right ahead. Anybody else have any questions? We have quite a few participants. I'm not going to be able to see the list, but I can fill in with some questions until we have somebody that chooses to ask. I can't see any hands. I'll be able to see the electronic hand in Zoom, but I can't see any people's hands. Speak up, anybody?
If I could actually go into a little bit more detail about how we did the text to speech.
Sure. Thank you.
I'd love to do that. So we actually used Amazon Polly. It's like a text to speech program through Amazon. But what we've done is we've actually used we used S3 for the storage of these MP3s, but we generate that when we build the code. So in AWS, there's a lot of triggers and streams, and like what you do is basically when you commit code, it builds, and when it's as part of that building process, it looks at, we actually have a content matrix, which is just basically a bunch of text in a bunch of different languages as well. Well, just right now it's English US and Spanish US, and then obviously English UK as well. But basically it will generate each of those MP3 files and store them in S3, and then we store the links to all of those in our application. So our application is actually calling up and saying, hey, I actually need this audio file to play. So it'll call up to S3, pull that back in, and then actually play that. So we've made the system revolving around using Polly and building out all of those MP3 files to be played. But the actual like text to speech part is made using Polly.
Any problems that you know of with incompatibility with certain software applications? Rich, you had mentioned a particular Windows software application. My guess, it would have been Vista or XP or something older.
I believe he was actually talking about Edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, Microsoft Edge and
Edge browser. Okay.
Yeah, the browser. They're kind of not the top tier of internet browsers, at least in my opinion. But there are some random issues that we run into when we try to use Microsoft Edge.
Well, Edge now uses Chrome as a background. So is there anticipating problems with that, with the newer version of Edge?
Maybe not. I actually didn't know about that. But it probably will run a lot smoother now, considering that.
The other thing is that the reason we did this is necessity. Many of our schools, which is where our foundation, they're all Chrome. So we really didn't need to use it, but that's a great idea. I should also say, yeah, you are right. It's not based on the newer versions. It's based on the older versions. We have we're loosely coupled with a wonderful company in the UK called MyMind. They're doing the same thing. And GDPR, of course, as you know, that data security, I think it makes HIPAA and FERPA look like child's play. So we really had to make sure that data security is the most important thing to us. So anything that there was a concern about, we just didn't want to touch.
Well, I'm impressed that you're following HIPAA. I was trained in HIPAA when I was at LexisNexis, every time I go into a doctor's office, I see some violation somehow. So I appreciate your concerns.
And you think they know better. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Sometimes it's just almost impossible. But I showed you a demo. In the real world, we wouldn't see that data.
Right.
So even if we get notified that somebody is like flagged, we don't know who that is. We only go by their personal email. So if it's fuzzy123, we're going to reach out to fuzzy123.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, like mine doesn't give my name either. So,
right.
Or at least my newest one doesn't. But I want to back up just a step here. And at least a few of our meeting participants today have had experience with Myers-Briggs, the Myers-Briggs assessment. You and I talked about this separately, but would you explain, sir, that what the difference is between your assessment and Myers-Briggs? Because there seems to be, to me, a little bit of overlap.
No, there is. I mean, so Myers-Briggs, of course, personality. And personality, it can be seen, and it's interesting, how ironic this is that my research is in personality, and none of it is really personality, the things that we do. The personality, of course, drives, if I'm an optimist, if part of my personality is an optimistic, then chances are I'm going to look at the glass half full. And of course, that's going to reflect on the life satisfaction items, for example. Not all the time, but it is. So yes, there is an overlap. But we want to avoid the personality aspects for a couple of things. We want to know what's going on in the individual's life right now. And so everything that you've seen, the hope, the global satisfaction, it changes in response to life circumstances, whereas personality tends to stay a little bit more stable, and it tends to overlook life circumstances, or at least looking in, if I'm an optimist, looking at more rosy. These indicators are much more sensitive to changes in one's life circumstance, lifestyle, among other things. That's why we're choosing this route rather than focusing on the personalities. The other thing is, this is information that is useful should the individual want to get additional help. So for example, if I'm low on hope, if I'm a therapist and I'm helping somebody who's low on hope, I know specifically to help them with that one to improve their health. I really don't know how to do that with personality. If you're an extrovert and you become an introvert, I don't know how to change your extrovert, if that makes sense. I don't know how to get you back to being an extrovert without really changing what's going on in your life. So we're kind of bypassing that whole personality thing, which can get a little mucky, and focus on what are these aspects that are now indicating that A, you're struggling, and B, how do we make sure that you get these personal strengths back up so you can overcome whatever the adversity you're experiencing.
Okay. By the way, if anybody has any questions, please pitch in. I have a list, my usual list of questions. Rich, it's known that if a person can express their feelings in any way, including through crying, yelling, or a diary, or just a willing ear, empathetic person, one's stress is reduced. They seem to be glad that somebody's interested in hearing them. Will your program reduce stress in any way just by people filling it out, or do you think there might be a chance that filling out this questionnaire might cause stress in and of itself?
Yeah, you're very good. And that's a great question. There's no data to show that. There's never been any data to show that if I take an instrument such as ours, it's going to elicit distress. What it does is it's bringing it out. It's bringing it out to the open. And so actually it's the opposite. By completing something like this and getting this information, it's almost like when you're unaware, you're not feeling very well, you don't know what it is, you go to the physician and you find out, you feel better, at least you know. It's the devil that you don't know that's always the scary part. So this does not elicit distress. This actually reduces distress, because once you take it, you kind of get a sense of, okay, now I know what I'm dealing with. And if you know what you're dealing with, now you have options. You've got strategies to overcome it. So it's really the opposite.
Back to the HIPAA question, and I'm thinking about this, that the information goes to the school and to the parents. Who would, does the school, or does the teacher or advisor or counselor at the school translate for the parents what this is, or who gets to look at it first? And is there any chance that there's a HIPAA violation there, or is a release have to be signed by the parents?
Yeah, so in schools, the version of HIPAA is FERPA. And what it is, it's the same, really the same thing. Only certain people can see individual information. So yes, school has to sign an agreement, and then the parents have to sign consent, first of all. Students have to provide assent. Mm-hmm. Only certain individuals within that school, we call them response teams, and that's your counselors, school psychologists, social workers, and nurses. They're the only ones that have access to the identified data. So teachers do not have access to this one. So it's a very small team. Students take it, and then parents are involved in this because a parent report is immediately generated as well. So if a student is identified as struggling, as a member of the response team, I know exactly who that student is. I'm going to reach out to them, and then I'm also going to contact the parent. That's that whole response system that we train every school in, and they work on this together as a team. And then they send out the report when they're ready to go to send it out to the parents. So the parents are involved in interventions if necessary. So the FERPA protects information. And again, we don't even see it. We don't even know who this is. It's only available to a certain group that parents have to provide consent for that. So that's what gets around the FERPA issues. And then it also involves the parent in this one. That's the beautiful thing about this system. We're the only one in America that directly involves parents into this problem-solving situation. I should also say, I know we're focusing on the at-risk students, but the goal here is to get everybody to the optimal range. And so there's something for everyone in schools, and they leverage this information quite well. So for example, I'll give you an example. One of our districts, they have a $5 million National Institute of Justice grant to defeat school violence. And school violence is not just bullying, it's like fighting, it's all this stuff. And it's a pretty tough school district. And when they started this one, the mechanism of change for this grant was they were going to choose leaders. And these are teen leaders. And the leaders that they chose were based on teacher nominations. And what these leaders were trained to do is that if you see it or say it, so if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I think somebody's going to get into a fight, they were trained to go to an adult so this could be prevented. And lo and behold, in that first year, the rates of violence actually increased. Not the rates of reported violence, the rates of violence actually increased. Mm. The amount of reporting by these leaders actually decreased. And the reason is because for those of us who have children, let me ask you a question. Well, I won't even ask you a question. I'll just give it to you. If I was to ask you, how is your child doing? And then I ask your child, how are you doing? I'm gonna get a correlation. The parent-child correlation on something as simple as that is 0.27. It's actually lower than, close to zero as it is to, much closer to zero as it is to 1. 0.27. Not a lot of overlap between those two ratings. Teachers is actually 0.24. So they're even worse to determine these internalized constructs. So the problem was they were using teacher nominations, but what teachers were actually nominating were the high visibility kids. You know, think about the athletes. They're not necessarily leaders sometimes. They actually instigate, which is what was happening in that school. So we came in year 2, and they used our data. They went to the optimal range students, those specific who were self-identified as, yeah, I got these leadership characteristics. They chose them to be part of this thing. And the rates of school violence have decreased by half in years 2, years 3, and years 4. So I know we're focusing on the at-risk kids, but there's something for everyone with this system in schools.
Nice, nice. Could this, your assessment identify any potential for well, it will for violence, from what you've just said, but creativity, or is creativity a two-edged sword?
It is. It's also a personality construct, right?
Uh-huh.
That's what we find. But many of these indicators, especially personal strengths, are correlated with creativity. We don't use that as an indicator, but yes, there's strong correlations between our indicators and constructs such as that.
Okay. It sounds like the program could identify potential juvenile delinquency, or issues, legal issues later in life.
Not necessarily. It's not really designed for that. I mean, that requires, I tell you how old I feel sometimes on these ones because I've done research in this one as well. So delinquency, when we think about delinquency, it's a legal term, right? In psychology, we use conduct disorder, oppositional, defiant. Those are behavioral issues. What we're trying to get at is the more internalizing issues that students struggle with but don't report over time. Those are far and away much more prevalent as students get older. They tend to keep it themselves, this internal distress, and believe it or not, much more destructive, not only to the individual, but also to the things then you're talking about some of these personality, behavioral issues. It's really not designed to look at that. It's more looked at, you know what it is? It's the power of connections. All it's trying to do is to try to bring to the surface issues that some students who are struggling and suffering in silence are facing, so that at least somebody at the school can reach out to them and say, hey, we're here for you if you need us. That's all we're trying to do here. That power, believe it or not, that power of reaching out is one of the biggest interventions we know in schools. That power of us reaching out to an employee and saying, we're here, we just want to make sure you know the resources, is a huge intervention in and of itself. It's not meant to predict things like you're mentioning. It's more to connect. That's what we're trying to do.
Okay. I think I just got unplugged from, can you hear me?
I can't.
Oh, okay. I think I just got unplugged from a USB. How soon will this begin at the Miami school system? That's the reason, by the way, why I called you, is I saw the article in the Miamisburg in the Dayton Daily News about the Miamisburg school system.
Yeah, we just got word. I think they're doing it either this week or starting next week. The whole COVID has really thrown districts in a array. We've had several finish it, thank goodness. But Miamisburg, I believe, is starting probably next week, given the Thanksgiving holiday.
Now, this could be sent to, if we have a student who's at-home instruction, it could be sent to the home.
Yes, it can. It's remote. So if your students and I'm your proctor, what we're doing here, and this, I'm glad you brought that up. So there's a difference in remote administration. We highly recommend districts, if they wanted to use a remote administration and they choose to use the depression indicator, as a proctor, before I send you your link, I want to make sure that there's a parent or a guardian at home. So there's a visual confirmation in case one of us or member of the response team needs to reach out. It's easy to do that. Now, they don't have to be there, but it's just so much easier. So your students, I'm seeing your parents, thank you. 15 minutes, I'll see you later. Don't stand behind your child. Don't stand where I can see you. Boop, and now you got it and you take it. And if I need to reach out to you, I will. It's that quick.
So, but it would require that much intervention with you, that much participation with you and the subject?
It can. It depends on so for every 100 students, about 7 to 10 will be identified as somebody we want to reach out within 24 hours. That's the high priority. Mm-hmm. So it's not that many. It's enough. So the great thing about this also with schools is that we actually have a calculator that helps schools understand how many you want to do at one time. You certainly don't want to do your entire school at one time. We had one district five years ago, we were piloting this. They did 1,200 students in 1 hour. And that calculation, right, 7 to 10 for every 100, it completely obliterated their resources. And we knew it was happening. It was like, don't do that. So we have a calculator that helps schools understand how many you want to do at one time. Broward County, Florida, 400,000 students. You know how many they're doing at one time? 50. They're just doing 50 at a time. Just get used to it. So the reason I'm bringing this up, it's a volume issue, right? We want to make sure that we don't obliterate any resources. If we do this remotely, it's going to be far less students at one time. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to expect out of 10 of you, I might have to reach out to 3 of you. And if I've got a team of us, that's easy to do. And it's only a 15-minute conversation, usually with the parents. It's not anything beyond that.
Mhm. Okay. All right. So it sounds like the students that are observed as being the most at risk would be the ones to take the test first.
No, they all can take it. They're going to be presented in our list first. So this helps the response team member just go, oh, that one, that one, that one, that one. Let's go get them. And so you don't need to, I mean, it's not like a SWAT team, but it's kind of like we know who we need to get to before we do the next round of administrations.
So there wouldn't it would be random enough that it wouldn't be identified by the subjects as being, okay, we're the trouble kids.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So we're taking
Nobody
this
knows
first.
about this. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
We have a whole training segment about how do you reach out to these students? How do you approach them? You don't want to do what one district did. You identify all of them on the PA system. You call them to the office.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. I can give you stories, but again, we all learn. It's so new for schools and for workplaces. We recognize it's a learning moment. It's a learning curve for everyone. So it's not meant to cast aspersions on any school. They're doing their best, but it is a learning moment for us all. And then we put this into our user manual, our training manual.
I assume that once everybody has taken the test that is supposed to have taken the test, that trends would be noticeable and graphed out or whatever.
Yeah. So what is released, not only that school report or student reports, a school gets that aggregate report, the district gets an aggregate report. If they're a member of the consortium, which is several school districts together, they get a report. So it's building up. And so you can compare not only your school against other schools, because we're nationwide, you can compare your school against similar schools some other place. So if your demographic is Appalachia and a certain demographic population, there's enough schools now in our system where you can do a comparison there too.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, after would you be delivering the results as they come in, or would you be gathering them and then delivering it after everybody has taken the assessment?
Yeah, so schools have the power. They can upload their report as it's going. Most of them will wait until all the students in that group that has been uploaded take it. But so it's both ways. That's the flexibility of the system for schools.
What's the fastest one could find the results?
About a nanosecond.
Oh, no, I mean, really, seriously? It
Yeah.
could go to the counselor or proctor, within seconds, within minutes,
Yep.
once the test is complete.
Yeah, it's done. It's instantaneous. As soon as I say done, it goes. I see it right away.
Would it be flagged in any particular way?
It'll be flagged.
Color-coded or something?
Yep. In if you remember, and I'll show it to you, but remember that at risk, there's also a number that's attached for students. There's a number that's attached to it. That number tells the response team how severe this is. So even though I'm in the at-risk range, that's where I am on the continuum, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm severe. It's so that number 1 through 5, and about 15% will have a number, but the response team knows exactly which number that is right away. So they can reach out to them anytime they want.
Wow. Why Miamisburg? Why? I mean, it in the article, in the Dayton Daily News article, it said Miamisburg was getting the assessment at no charge. Is it? I'm just curious, why Miamisburg and not one of the other schools in the area?
Well, and that's great. So the key word is in the area. So when we started this in 2018, we targeted Kentucky first, because that's really where we started this whole. And then we worked our way to Indiana, all the way through Utah, Montana. And then we started to work our way into Ohio. So Ohio is actually our last state, even though we're a Cincinnati-based company. So that's why many of the districts south of us are using it in their workplace. It just so happened that when we presented this to Miamisburg, they wanted this for their employees. I also think it's just Miamisburg is ahead of the curve. I really was impressed with what they were doing there.
Okay, cool. There's been controversies about IQ tests, SAT and ACT tests, not representing all societal groups or ethnic groups, categories or subcategories. How does your assessment address potential controversies such as these controversies with the IQ, SAT, and ACT?
Yeah, so we use AI constantly to refine our algorithms, and it's not just collectively. So that's I don't want to get off on a tangent, but it's always been my concern that many of these companies out there, and I'm not casting aspersions, but they're basing their norms on what was collected a decade ago. We don't want to be that company, so we constantly refine our algorithms based on new inputs that are coming in. So one of the things we do is we want to make sure that if there are any differences between demographic variables, for example, they're minimal. Because you're going to get mean scores because it's usually interfacing with socioeconomic status, right? And that we want to make sure that these group differences, if there are, they're minimal at most, and that's exactly what our findings do. It shows that regardless of your race or cultural background, your age, gender, there's really no differences. You can go on our website to find that. We actually publish our validity studies on our website. By the way, if you go to Terrace Metrics now, you're going to get the school report. The other sectors are brought down because we're refining our website, but that should be up next week.
Okay. Have you seen any trends so far, especially keeping in mind the pre-pandemic and current situation?
We were very fortunate to have our schools continue to use our system even through the pandemic of the quarantine, because they were using it online. What we're seeing is about a 10% increase in anxiety. This is our students, 10% increase in anxiety, about a 10% increase in ostracism, which makes sense, right? Because the quarantine has really severed a lot of social relationships. So that's what we're seeing. We're not seeing a big increase in depression. And it depends on the sector. We are seeing a slight increase in drug alcohol concerns. But again, it depends on the sector.
Okay. I think Dave has a question. And thank you, Dave, for using the hand. I could see that, but I can't see any hands of faces next to faces.
Well,
Go right ahead, Dave.
thank you. This is actually for Logan. Very nice web interface that you're running, and looks great and seems very responsive. I was wondering what it's written in, Python, or what do you use?
So the full stack is actually JavaScript. On the front end, we're using React.js. On the back end, we're using Node.js, which we're actually deploying to AWS. Like the whole stack is basically being utilized in AWS. We're using pretty much everything through AWS. So that includes sending emails. We're doing our API, our authentication, pretty much everything through AWS, including like all of our users are stored through AWS's Cognito. But yeah, everything is JavaScript. So like React is what we're using for the front end. And then inside of that, we like have our content matrix, and pretty much everything is just straight JavaScript.
Cool.
Very good. Well, it looks very nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave. Any other questions? I have one more, and then I can we can round it up. Rich, is it possible for you to notice the difference between those trying to give the answers that the subject thinks you want to see compared to what is the true, honest snapshot of their present demeanor?
Yeah, it's the age-old, discussions, debates that you have whenever you're talking about assessments of these kinds. I can say that we have high validity indices embedded within the system. It's meant to catch that if that was indeed the case. One you saw, which is a silly question. Another one is the speed of which this is completed. You need to have time to do this, but there's 3 others that are embedded. But even so, you can't completely predict. I'm a forensic psychologist, and so even forensics, that's what you get paid for, is to try to determine, are you really being honest or not? We can only assume that the individual takes this in the way it's intended to be. But that assumption comes with a lot of assumptions. We're trying to capture that. But I will say that the rates of invalid protocols are very, very low. The feedback from the individuals who have taken it, regardless of whether it's a student or whether it's an adult, have said, overall, I do take this seriously. So that's what we have to do. We have to go by that.
You and I talked about the Myers-Briggs test, which I'd taken a couple times when I was at LexisNexis. And with the Myers-Briggs test, you can take it on the web. Anybody can take it on the web now. You just have to do a search on, know how to spell it right, but you just do have to search on that. Do you anticipate anything like that in the future where somebody gives their credit card? Or is this something that's more institutional?
No, no, we do anticipate that's what we're going towards. If you'd like, for the viewing audience and not the recording audience.
Yeah. Okay. You want me to turn the recorder off? I'd be happy to do that if you want.
If you could, that would be great, because
Sure. Hold on just a second. For proprietary reasons, we're turning off the recording briefly. Rich, this has been very interesting. Very interesting. I told you the reason why I originally the article flagged me, and I flagged the article, and that's because I was interested in some form of an assessment for employees at theaters, because they have to deal with crowds, and you don't want somebody who is on the edge anyway, because they'll just make the crowd worse.
Agreed.
So,
100%.
It looks like this can grow into something that what I had in mind.
Thank you.
And now there was a test in there about do you take drugs, marijuana, et cetera. It's how much of an influence is that, or is that more of an indication of wanting escape?
It depends. I mean, part of this is you can pretty much, for example, it depends on the knowledge. So for first responders, for example, oftentimes, given this the culture of what they do, they're less likely to ask for help, and they're more likely to self-medicate. So usually you see a high trauma, and you also see the high drug alcohol. That drug alcohol, by the way, and again, there's no value statement to this. We're not asking how often you drink. That's usually the off-putting kind of questions. That's not what this is about. We want to bring to the person's attention whether this is causing distress for you or your significant others. And then we leave it to them to decide what they want to do with this information. Yeah.
Okay.
But usually that's what you see. There are certain profiles to look for: first responders, high trauma, and then also the corresponding drug alcohol. The question, of course, is, does the trauma inform the drug alcohol, or does the drug alcohol, is that a separate issue? That's not what this is about. It's just to bring attention. The key to this, though, is that individuals then take it. So they can go to the stress center where I used to work, or any other place, and they can get the kind of help, because now they recognize there is an issue, and they can keep taking this and see how well they improve in response to intervention. That's the important thing.
Okay. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to express your frustration through habits or obsessions. Drugs don't have to be the only one. I worked at a movie theater, and we would get people to come in and escape watching 4 different movies a day. I mean, that, to me, that's obsessive. Okay. Yeah. But I can watch 2 or 3, but not 4. So,
I draw the line.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody's got their extreme.
2 or 3 is normal. 4,
That's right. That's right. So anyway, is there I mean, other than drugs, is there any kind of way to highlight? I mean, there's, like I say, there's all kinds of bad habits. There's all kind of obsessiveness.
Right. There is.
Does that?
Well, the key of this one is if you start asking those kind of, you're mentioning, then that becomes very diagnostic-y, and that's not what this is about. And also that's a reason why we don't include other forms of drugs, because either you're doing marijuana, or if you're going to do marijuana, you're going to do alcohol. No problem. I mean, there's no value to this one, but usually they're correlated with other drugs as well. And so if that's called up, okay, maybe it's time to go in and get a little bit deeper check or look into this. So that's all we're doing.
Okay. Okay. Wow, this has been terrific. Any other questions here? I keep asking for questions, but I'm the one that it seems to ask the most of them. Dave, your question was great, and I appreciate your contribution there. I don't see anybody else's questions. Hands pop up. Speak up, please. Unmute yourself. I don't hear anything. I don't hear anything. Rich, I mean, it's been terrific. Thank you very much.
It's an honor to be here, and thank you for sending us that $20,000 check for this.
Yeah, right.
Really appreciate that.
Yeah. I wish we had that much to send. Anyway, you have a great evening. You're welcome to stay with us. And both of you, Logan. And by the way, Logan, did you have a question, Mike?
Yeah. Does your software ever help you detect if teachers are frustrating the students?
Well, you're really bringing up a great point, and we tend to forget. So there's two reasons. The reasons why we want to do the educator side is that for the past 8 months, we've really taken good care of our kids. I mean, collectively, we really have put so much work on that one. Teachers are no different than any other member of the helping profession. They're going to put the needs of others first, and oftentimes they start to de-escalate, and they're not even knowing it. And that could interfere with their ability to effectively teach. So we wanted to bring this to their attention to catch it, so that it stops that in case that's the case. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
By the way, Logan is soon to be a father, and we appreciate you coming in this close to fatherhood and spending time with us. Thank you, Logan.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's been definitely fun answering some questions and definitely talking about the more technical side of what Terrace Metrics is doing. So one thing I did want to mention is that this application really is amazing. I mean, it's something that's saving lives and really helping people. Personally, I'm extremely invested in this project just because I had a friend that actually did commit suicide, and I don't even know if Rich knows this, but it's definitely stressful. Even just going to school, he actually just started college at the time, but this application definitely, I think, would have helped him tremendously had it been around. So I'm really happy that moving forward, we're able to definitely help people.
Thank you, Logan.
I believe you can, and I believe this will most definitely help people.
It's very rare in our lives to know that we are making a difference in what we're doing. I mean, really, truly, directly. As a university professor for many years, I knew I was doing it, but that's a downstream effect. It's kind of like, it's no different being a teacher. When we hear stories about how this actually has saved a life, it literally has. It makes it worthwhile. So we're very excited. It's a passion for what all of us doing. And we really appreciate you taking the time learning about this. And if you get a chance, look at Fusion, man. They're so fantastic.
Logan reminds me of me 60 years ago.
Well, you were 2 years old?
No, I was 20 back then, and that's a month ago is when my first baby was born. So
you look great.
Well, thank you all again. Like I say, you're welcome to stay or visit our meetup page or DMA page. All our meetings are free and open to the public. If you just want to sit in and see what's going on and contribute, please contribute.
Certainly will. It's an honor. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
You too. Thank you.
Same to you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, y'all. All right. We're just about moving on here into the rest. If you liked our presentation and you have any additional questions, you can reach tonight's featured speaker, Richard Gilman or Rich Gilman, through a contact form on his website, terracemetrics.com. That's TerraceMetrics.org, terracemetrics.org. If you would like to view tonight's presentation again, including Rich's introduction and talk, minus the spots that we had to take out for proprietary reasons, it will be available at the bottom of our website's homepage at www.dma1.org, hopefully later this week, over the weekend, perhaps. If you have any friends who would be interested in tonight's topic or any other of the topics that we presented since we began recording our meetings and since the pandemic, our meetings recordings are posted at our YouTube channel, which you can reach through a link near the bottom of our homepage, www.dma1.org. Please feel free to forward our website to any of your friends who may be interested in any of our meetings. We had 2 meetings about Chromebooks, both introduction and intermediate, which were posted on our YouTube channel when many schools first went online and hybrid. Unfortunately, it looks as if many schools will be having online instruction through the rest of the year and well into 2021, sadly so. If you like our presentations and you like what the DMA does to support, educate, and enlighten our community, please become a member. For only $25 a year, you can help move the DMA into the future by becoming a member. Once you become a member and have been a member for only a year before our September election, you can then become a trustee on our board of trustees and help lead our fine organization. Traditionally, the DMA does not have a December general meeting. I had proposed the idea of a DMA online holiday party, similar to what Dayton History planned with their event called Cheers Are Ringing in the Holidays Virtual Wine Tasting fundraiser, which took place this past Wednesday, November 18th. Unfortunately, we did not have enough time to plan an online meeting, anything similar to what we had done in past December holiday parties. And so maybe next December. Consequently, we will be not be having a general meeting next month, except for our board of trustees and a few SIG meetings. And we'll talk about those SIG meetings later. Now, if you cannot attend any of these meetings because of family commitments or otherwise, instead of your contributing ideas, thoughts, and news during a meeting, you can indirectly contribute to the DMA through smile.amazon.com. So if you go to smile.amazon.com, before you purchase anything from that site for the holidays, Amazon donates to the DMA a portion equal to a piece of your purchase. There's no additional cost to you, and you can read more about this DMA benefit on our homepage, www.dma1.org. Soon I will be asking for your computer problems, which the DMA Brain Trust will address at the end of our meeting. Please have your questions ready for a solution. I have one did you know, and this is a true story. Imagine moving your computer's cursor with your tongue. Now, a recently developed device which resembles an upper false tooth plate, this enables one to move their cursor with their tongue. Now, this is for people who are disabled or for those whose hands are busy elsewhere. I think I want to get one of those. DMA's news, including SIGs. Let me give you this, and then we'll ask the SIGs to talk if what SIGs will be present and the other news. In the past, our traditional cool tech stuff I got during the holidays in our January general meeting. We've needed more product demonstrations. We were a little shy on on the group volunteering. If you have a product you would like to talk about early in the month of January, and you want to talk about it at our meeting, which is, as you know, the last Tuesday of every month, please let us know through the form on our Contact Us page on our website. This will greatly help us budget our meeting time and come up with a more interesting evening meeting. I have a couple of meeting topics in mind, including an AP CUG video or two to fill in if we do not hear of any planned new product descriptions or demonstrations from anyone. Now, let me get back into this. And I know Dave had some news to give us. Dave, you there? Yeah, there we are.
Yep. Can I share my screen?
Oh, yes. Hold on just a second.
Since we last met, it seems that every month Raspberry Pi organization is bringing out something new.
You're a co-host now, Dave.
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead, share.
So in a week or so after we last met, Raspberry Pi introduced this device, a Raspberry Pi 400. It is a new design on the Raspberry PC board, mounted in their little chiclet type keyboard. So a complete system ready to roll, keyboard and all. What you're looking at here is the kit, which comes with all the things you see here for $100 even. The book weighs more than the computer. But it is a full up and up Raspberry Pi system. I've got one running over here. Of course, I had to make a run down to a local store, Cincinnati, in order to get the first ones. Come in batches of 10, and they were gone by the end of the day. So very interesting little machine. I've enjoyed it quite a bit. And it is available at a lot of places that you guys know and go to. So lots of fun. That's it.
Thank you, Dave. All right, I see Gary Ganger. Would you like to talk to us about the Classic Computing SIG?
Well, like normal, I mentioned last month that I wasn't going to participate in the Tech Fest because of the trying to put something together would be too hard for a museum that is based on hands-on. But otherwise, been okay. I've changed a little bit. This machine you see me on tonight is a new computer, thanks to Sam's Club and their sale. And I had to add a camera because the computer itself is just a box. You add your own monitor. And the monitor I had, even though it's HDMI, didn't have a camera, and I was able to pick up a camera that's really fairly cheap, but it looks good picture from what I see. Been having some fun with that, getting it ready to work. And I think, in fact, today is the first time I've been able to use it on Zoom. So.
Well, have you been getting many calls? I know that your SIG is phone assistance only.
Well, no one's called. I wouldn't expect them to really be doing it around this season. They're more looking at whether they want new machines rather than how an old machine's doing.
Dig it. Well, I'm sure you can help them with some of the newer machines too. Anyway.
Well, like I say, I'm learning this one, and it's completely different. I don't particularly like some of the things, and now I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to be able to boot through UEFI so I can get some Linux running on it. Gary probably knows that, right?
Gary Turner, you're up next. Linux SIG, you got something to tell us about that? You're muted now.
Yeah, I guess with the pandemic, there's no real news. We have been meeting on Zoom. Hopefully, sooner for the new year, we'll get vaccines and we'll be back in business. But we had a virtual Ohio Land Fest was a virtual event, so you could go attend sessions and such on Zoom and be part of the crowd, so to speak. I actually didn't spend any time there myself, but others did.
Well, it looks like we got the TJ Chumps back because we lost a bunch of people that I think were probably at Chumps, and they're back now. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Gary Turner?
No, I think that's good.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your participation and the contribution. Anybody else would like to say anything about any before we pass this on to Gladys?
I see Martin back there.
Is Martin here? If I can't see you on the screen, Martin, but if you're here and you would like to say something about the investment SIG, I think you have a meeting scheduled next month, according to the calendar.
Looks like we lost.
Yeah, it looks like we lost
TJ.
Chumps again. I think at the next board meeting we ought to buy a hotspot, a good one. Edwin, how you doing there? You got us back up? Edwin Davidson, you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, we're back up. We're having trouble tonight. I don't know why, but technically I'm not connected to the internet right now.
Are we on their Wi-Fi or are we on our own borrowed hotspot?
No, we don't have a borrowed hotspot. I'm using my own.
Using your own, okay.
So it's, but we keep on getting knocked off. So I don't know what's going on here.
All right, if anybody has any tips on a really good Wi-Fi hotspot that DMA can buy to solve this problem, it's not fair for us to use somebody's phone and run up the minutes. So I think it'd only be fair for the DMA to own a hotspot and pay for it ourselves, pay for all of this.
Well, I looked into this. The hotspots usually cost you at least $30 a month plus the cost of the hotspot. And if you have your own personal phone with the hotspot, it ends up costing you an extra, you can sort of get a limited plan, which I could use for my phone because I don't talk that much. But if you're going to add the hotspot, you're back up to about the $60 range again. So it's about $30 just for the hotspot is what you're paying, it looks like. So getting a hotspot specifically for this would cost us $30 a month approximately.
Okay. Well, you're breaking up a little bit there. So was Martin in the background for us to, is Martin there? I guess not. You're frozen. We got a frozen image at GJ Chumps. Gladys, is there any way we can get you here? If you can hear me? Okay, we got image now. We got moved image now on the TJ Chumps. I see your hand. Can we get Gladys on?
Is it time for the raffle?
Yeah, I have closing statements, but I think it'd be time for the raffle unless anybody else has any additional information.
I'm showing that I don't have an internet connection again, so somebody keeps dicking with this, or somebody's out there dealing with something that's interrupting our hotspot. What? Yeah, so somebody's out there playing with something.
Okay, can you see me, Peter?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
we
you.
have 3 prizes. We have a Samsung Galaxy Fit. It's a fitness band. And second prize, we have we also have a Skull Candy earbuds.
Okay.
Skull Candy Indie. And we have a Google Home Mini.
Okay.
So it looks like we also have cash on the table.
Does somebody pay for some food?
Let's see what we got. First one is, I've got two. Peter Hess.
Okay. Well, thank you. Two weeks in a row I'm winning. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's really weird.
We want to recount.
What were the first things you said before the earbuds?
Fitness band.
Earbuds.
Galaxy Fit.
I'll have another pair of earbuds. I could use them as gifts.
Samsung Galaxy activity tracker with heart rate.
Earbuds, please.
Say it again.
Earbuds.
Yours is going bad too.
Can you hear me? Well, we got to fix this. Earbuds.
Earbuds?
Earbuds, please.
The other one here is
Ed's noise getting in.
Jeff Walton. Is Jeff Walton still here?
Okay, now could everybody but Gladys' computer please turn off your sound? Ed, I'm going to turn off your sound. We're getting, I think that's part of our problem. We're getting echo. Jeff, I like what you did with the background there. Tell me how you did that, would you?
Clippy, your web page, and PowerPoint saved as a JPEG.
Okay, what was the first thing you said? PowerPoint, web page, and what?
The Windows clip
He's still there.
snippy.
Snippy. Okay. All right.
But he
PowerPoint and a web page. Got it. All right. Do we have everybody shut off, all the microphones shut off that are in?
Oh, Jeff would like the fitness band.
Yep.
Right? Galaxy Fit Band?
Yes, please.
Last one. Who do we have? Ed Skya.
Ed?
Did you want the Google Home Mini? Okay. I seem to remember him telling me now. Trying not to look here. Steve Fry. You can talk to him. It'll talk back. Steve Fry gets, all right, Steve gets the Google Home Mini. What?
Are we all done with the drawings?
We're done.
Okay, well, I'm wrapping this up then. Are there any problems that need to be brain trust solutions? Any problems that need to be solved by our brain trust?
Oh, I have a question for Norbert.
Mike, you have a question for Bob G.
Yeah, Peter, I have one comment. I was looking, since I missed last month's meeting, I was looking for where the recordings were at, and it wasn't obvious that I could find the meeting recordings on the YouTube channel. It just mentioned the YouTube channel. It didn't say the meeting recordings were there. So we probably should tweak the text a little bit on that.
Thank you for that advice. I think we need to tweak some of the words on our webpage too. So I'll work on that. We'll have time now since we don't have. I won't be doing any meetings until January, the end of January. Did you have Mike? Did you have any questions for Bob G? Okay. Bruce, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question for Norbert.
Mhm.
How do you get your background there?
I made mine. This is something I saw on my TV. I took out my camera and I did a 10-second video and I put it up on YouTube. It's simply a background, a little MP4 10-second video that repeats itself.
Do you use a green screen?
Nope, don't need it for my computer.
Okay. Looks good.
Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent.
If I may,
Yes. Dave?
first off, if you're running Linux, that option is not available.
Oh, okay, I am.
And secondly, if you don't have a fairly up-to-date computer, Bob got himself a real nice computer, it won't work either. It'll come up and tell you it doesn't support it.
Correct.
So you just need, what, a lot of RAM, fast processor?
Video,
Mainly a good video card.
Good
Oh,
video card.
Windows.
Yep.
You need Windows too.
Well, it
Yes.
looks good. But
it works on Mac.
It works on Mac. Okay. Looks good. How about Chromebook?
Unknown.
Unknown. Okay. All right.
Depends on the Chromebook.
Yeah. I'm looking at a Chromebook. I think that's going to be my next purchase.
It's got an i5 in it.
It says i3 is the one that I was looking at, but do you think i5 is?
That's a maybe. i5, you should have it. i3, it's a maybe.
i3 is a maybe. Okay. That's
Yep.
good to know. All right. Thank you very much. Anybody else have any questions or suggestions or additions?
This one I'm using right now is an i3,
i3?
but it's a tabletop, not a laptop. So
Okay. Yeah, what I'm using here is an i5.
Yeah,
All right.
The video card that you've got in that, and a lot of them that are using the onboard video card will not support it. But the best thing to do is just try it. It'll just come up and say, I won't do it.
Okay. The worst you'll get is a no, huh?
Yeah.
You're not going to get a screw you. You'll just get a no.
No.
Or you get one where you're out in space because the video will be there and you will pop in and out. Your head is occasionally viewable and most of the time not. Look like a ghost. So it works for Halloween, but the rest of the time not recommended.
Okay. All right. Well, let me wrap this up, and I'll turn off the recording after after you hear the words "end recording." We want to see and hear from you in January. We hope to have the January meeting topic finalized by mid-month. This concludes the last DMA general meeting for the year 2020. I hope you have an extremely happy, healthy, and grateful Thanksgiving through the end of the year. End recording.
And then a note for you, Peter.
And